Put your hands where I can see them." The words came from behind me, sharp and unfamiliar, cutting through the soft morning hush like a snapped twig in a forest. I froze, not because I was afraid, because I was confused. I had been standing in my driveway, mug of black coffee steaming in the early air, watching the mist lift off the pines that bordered my property. It was the same ritual every morning, same chipped mug, same worn flannel, same silence broken only by birds and the distant hum of a highway half a mile away. I lived here for the quiet. I built this life carefully after the noise of everything that came before, after deployments, after crowds, after the constant hum of threat that never truly shuts off in your nervous system. I chose this small house on the edge of a development because it backed up to protected land. No neighbors behind me, just trees, deer tracks in the mud, and the occasional coyote call at dusk. Peace isn't something you stumble into after a certain kind of life. You cultivate it. You defend it quietly. I turned slowly. A man stood near the edge of my driveway, one hand on his belt, the other resting casually on what looked like a holstered handgun. He wore a dark polo shirt with a stitched emblem that said Community Safety Patrol, cargo pants, cheap boots, sunglasses even though the sun was barely up. He looked like a costume version of authority. "Can I help you?" I asked evenly. He smirked. "You can start by stepping away from the vehicle." "My vehicle?" "Don't get cute. We've had reports." "Reports of what?" He leaned forward slightly, like he was enjoying the moment. "Suspicious activity." I glanced around at my driveway, my truck, my coffee, the quiet woods. "This is my property." He tapped the emblem on his chest. "HOA Patrol. We enforce community rules." I didn't know we had an armed HOA. He didn't answer that. He just kept staring, measuring, waiting for me to react the way people usually do when they feel cornered by a bad-shaped object. I didn't. That seemed to irritate him. After a long pause, he stepped back and said, "Just keep things clean around here. We're watching." Then he turned and walked away like he just issued a citation in his own mind. I stood there long after he disappeared down the street, the coffee cooling in my hand. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous yet, just off, like hearing a floorboard creak in a house you thought was empty. I shook it off and went inside. Peace means not letting every stranger hijack your nervous system. I'd learned that the hard way. But the encounters kept coming. A handwritten warning slipped under my mailbox about improper trash placement. A neighbor I barely knew giving me a strange look instead of the usual nod. A notice taped crookedly to my fence claiming I'd violated some landscaping regulation I'd never heard of. Every single thing came stamped with that same fake-looking HOA emblem. I attended the next HOA meeting out of simple curiosity. No one there knew what I was talking about. There was no armed patrol, no official community safety unit, no man matching the description I gave. A few board members exchanged uncomfortable looks. One woman said carefully that some residents had complained about a guy who takes long walks near the tree line. Another mentioned unusual equipment deliveries, meaning a new grill and a stack of firewood I'd hauled in last month. Rumors. Fear dressed up as concern. I thanked them and left. That night I found a fresh boot print near my back fence. Not a deer. Not mine. Someone had been on my property. The next morning my security camera, one I'd installed years ago and barely thought about, showed the same man walking along my fence line just after midnight, flashlight sweeping slowly like he owned the place. Not lost, not confused, deliberate. That was the moment the quiet voice inside me shifted. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intentional.
If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I tried to handle it the civilized way. I called the HOA board again, sent screenshots, asked if anyone recognized the man. They were polite but hesitant now, defensive, a little distant. One of them finally said, "We don't want to escalate things unnecessarily," which is code for, "You're making us uncomfortable." The fake patrol notices kept coming. One cited me for unauthorized modifications to my property. Another accused me of storing hazardous materials. A third claimed I'd violated noise ordinances on a night I hadn't even been home. Neighbors started whispering. A guy who used to wave stopped making eye contact. A woman walking her dog crossed the street when she saw me. Someone posted anonymously on the community forum about military guys who can't adjust to civilian life. I read it without reacting. Isolation has a particular flavor. It's quiet, but it isn't peaceful. It hums. I kept documenting everything. Dates, times, camera footage, photos of the notices, screenshots of the forum posts. Then one afternoon, I caught him on camera again, this time opening my side gate and stepping fully into my yard. He wasn't hiding anymore. I saved the clip. That evening, I drove to the local police station and spoke with an officer, showed him the footage, explained the pattern. He frowned, said they'd look into it, asked if the man had identified himself as law enforcement. No, I said, just HOA. He nodded slowly. That's not a thing. I left feeling slightly better but not reassured. 2 days later, my truck windshield was cracked, a single spiderweb fracture near the driver's side corner. Could have been a rock, could have been something else. No note, no witnesses, just pressure. The breaking point came on a quiet Sunday morning. I was trimming branches along the fence line when I heard tires crunch on gravel behind me. "Drop it," a voice said. I turned. He stood 10 feet away, hand wrapped around the grip of his gun, half drawn from the holster. Not pointed yet, but ready. My clippers fell from my hand. "You've been warned. You don't belong here." The world narrowed. I could hear my own breathing, the rustle of leaves, the faint bark of a dog somewhere down the block. "This is my home," I said calmly. He took a step closer. "You think I can't make problems disappear?" His hand tightened on the grip. I didn't move. I didn't need to. He stared at me for a solid second, then slowly eased the gun back into the holster like he'd just proven something to himself. "Next time," he said quietly, "you won't get a warning." He left. My hands were steady, my pulse wasn't. That's the part people don't understand about restraint. It's not weakness, it's discipline under pressure. But now it wasn't just harassment, it was a felony. I pulled the footage immediately.
The following week, I installed 2 additional cameras, visible ones this time. I adjusted my routine slightly. Predictable patterns make predictable predators. I waited. Sure enough, he came back after dusk. This time, he walked straight up my driveway, chest puffed out, hand resting near his waistband like a badge of dominance. "You think cameras scare me?" he called. I stepped onto the porch slowly, phone recording in my hand. "You're trespassing," I said evenly. He laughed. "Prove it." Then he made the mistake. He reached into his waistband and pulled the gun fully into view, angling it downward but unmistakably brandished. "You keep pushing," he said, "and accidents happen." I said nothing. He talked. He bragged about how the HOA had his back, how nobody would believe me, how he'd handled guys like me before. Every word went into the camera, every gesture, every threat. I watched his confidence grow. That's what overconfidence does. It makes people sloppy. What he didn't know was that a marked patrol unit was already staged 2 blocks away. My friend had coordinated quietly with the detective who'd reviewed the earlier footage. They wanted him clean, on camera, in the act. When the red and blue lights flooded the street, the shift in his face was immediate. Confusion, then panic, then anger. He tried to shove the gun back into his waistband too late. Commands rang out, loud, clear, professional. He froze, dropped the weapon, hands went up shaking. The officers moved in fast and controlled. No chaos, no drama, just procedure. He was cuffed in my driveway, under my porch light, the same place he tried to scare me into submission. The gun turned out to be stolen.
He was charged with impersonation, brandishing, criminal threats, trespassing, and possession of a stolen firearm. The HOA board member who'd shielded him resigned within days once the rental connections surfaced publicly. The fines were voided, the citations dismissed. A formal apology letter arrived from the HOA, stiff and uncomfortable and late. The neighborhood shifted back slowly. Awkward nods returned, a few quiet apologies. A couple of neighbors admitted they'd been afraid to speak up. I didn't hold it against them. Fear makes people small sometimes. A week later, I stood in my driveway again, with my coffee as the morning fog lifted through the trees. Same mug, same birds, same silence. But it felt earned now, not just quiet, safe. There's a difference between reacting with force and responding with patience, between ego and discipline, between winning a moment and protecting a life you've built carefully over time. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it documents. Sometimes it lets truth walk into its own trap. If you've ever been pushed quietly, underestimated, or pressured into shrinking yourself for someone else's comfort, you're not alone. You don't always need to explode to stand your ground. What would you have done in my place?